Hello, everyone. In these next few videos, we're going to be talking about Alzheimer's disease. In this first video, it's going to be talking about the signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's. So, let's talk about dementia first. Dementia really isn't a disease, more as it is a way to describe a set of symptoms. Symptoms like memory loss and the inability to learn new things. Now, what is dementia? Dementia is damage to the brain, but more specifically, the damage to these neurons. So, when you damage the neuron, it's not able to connect and communicate with the other neurons. And that's how the brain works, is this connection and communication between each neuron in the brain. So, Alzheimer's disease is a form of dementia. It's actually a degenerative disease. And when you think of degenerative, it actually means loss, the loss of. And then you think of you think of neuro, and that means neuron. So loss of neurons would be neurodegenerative. Let's get into signs and symptoms. So let's get into signs and symptoms. Now, I know what you're going to say. Let's say it together. Symptom of Alzheimer's is memory loss. Yep, that's right. Are you surprised? Probably not. That's the main factor of Alzheimer's and what makes it so unique from all the other diseases. And also, that's why it's the saddest, in my opinion, as well in elderly diseases. So besides that, symptoms actually will vary, especially in the beginning. They start almost a decade before symptoms are actually noticeable to the person or people around them. There's also a lot of non-cognitive. There's also a lot of non-memory cognitive functions that are impaired, such as word finding. Maybe they are trying to think of a word, it just really can't find it. I mean, I've had that too, but it'll be more bad with these symptoms of someone with Alzheimer's, as well as visual and spatial issues. So visually and spatially, like being aware of how much distance is between you and another object. So my grandpa, he loves playing horseshoes, right? He's a champion actually at horseshoes. He's amazing. He's also really competitive too. So, but if he suddenly had a problem and getting horseshoes in there, not just like one day, but he was consistently getting worse and worse and didn't have that spatial awareness of the horseshoe, that could have possibly been a sign of Alzheimer's. Also, reasoning and judgment. Maybe they aren't making the best decisions. Maybe the decisions are obviously like not very well thought out or very well informed choices to make. So that can also be impaired as well. So when does this happen? On average, it happens in the mid 60s, so that retirement age. And that's for the average. There's also early onset Alzheimer's, which occurs as early as the 30s. Yeah, it's a little scary, but it does happen in less than 10% of people who have Alzheimer's. So it's definitely more rare to have it in your 30s. All right, so let's start with the mild stages. In this stage, you have certain cognitive functions that start to decrease. Obvious one is memory, like we've been talking about, and then reasoning and judgment as well. These can manifest in various ways. They might get lost easy. They might not be able to get home as quickly as they did because they were lost or confused. They might have a hard time dealing with money and not be paying their bills. They also might be asking questions multiple times. If I sat down with my grandma and she was like, "Oh, how's school been?" I'm like, "Oh, great, grandma." And then we keep talking and the conversation develops. And then she's like, "Oh, like, wait, how has school been?" And I'm like, "Oh, you already asked me that question, grandma." Also, they might be taking a long time to do certain daily functions like getting dressed or cleaning up, mm, any daily activity like that. It's also possible that they could have some behavior or personality changes. Maybe someone that was like really sweet before is starting to get a little more snappy or very fussy about cleaning or something like that. All right, moving on to the moderate stages of Alzheimer's. This is where it gets a little more serious with the symptoms. So we have language as a symptom. Now, they might not be able to talk in the way that they used to and articulate their words and their sentences um, as they used to or as well as the average person. They also have a hard time with conscious thought. So maybe they are talking about something and then suddenly they like forget what they were about to say and they can't remember. And I know this happens to everyone, but it becomes a lot more apparent in Alzheimer's. And very prominent symptom of Alzheimer's is having issues recognizing people, and not just any people, but starting to not recognize their friends and family. This is one of the hardest symptoms out of them all. I really sympathize with anyone who's dealing with that. Also, they are unable to learn new things. Maybe they had a hard time learning new things before, but now they're just unable to learn new things. That short-term memory loss is really affecting them. They also might have trouble doing multi-step tasks, like maybe getting dressed and going through their daily routine. Anything that has multi steps that they might have a little more trouble at this stage. Oh, and they might have some hallucinations, some delusions. I work at the mental state hospital, and in the elderly unit that I've worked at before, this has been a problem. One of the patients thought I was their sister and was calling me inappropriate names because they don't like their sister. Um, that patient had Alzheimer's, and that is an example of a delusion that they think I'm their sister. That is also on stage. So here is a rundown of everything in this stage, and moving on to the severe stages of Alzheimer's. So this is where the neurological damage has really spread at this point. It has covered most of the brain. If you look at the picture, there is going to be a healthy brain on the left and a severe Alzheimer's brain on the right. And that really shows how it has affected the person not only um, emotionally, not only like functionally in their life, but also physically. Communication is almost non existent at this point. They really cannot communicate, and it becomes very hard for family members. They're also completely dependent. Everything in their life, they have to depend on another person to do. They have no independence. They're definitely at some kind of nursing home at this point, and they're being taken care of, hopefully, and safe. And the final part of this stage is the body shutting down. They're usually bedridden for most of this stage, and they actually don't usually die of the disease itself, but they die of some type of infection or pneumonia from the effects of the disease and the body shutting down. So, those are the symptoms of severe stages of Alzheimer's. A few more things is that through these stages, it's only going to be about 4 to 8 years from the mild stage to the more severe stage um, after they've been diagnosed. That is the average, though. So there's also been people that have lived up to 20 years after their diagnosis. So, all right, and that is going to be close to the end of our video. We summarized the definition of Alzheimer's, the signs and symptoms, the three stages mild, moderate, and severe, and then what happens in each stage. Um, so, a little take home message for you guys. If you're talking to someone with Alzheimer's, say you're a clinician, or maybe you're just like yourself right now, if you were talking to someone with Alzheimer's, knowing the symptoms that they have, the cognitive disabilities that they have, how would you approach talking to them? How would you accommodate someone who has those struggles and those symptoms? And then, after you thought about that for a little minute, there's also an animated film illustrating Alzheimer's disease. It's in the link below. I feel like it's very cute and it's also very um, accurate to someone who might be experiencing these things. So, and that is the end of our video. Stay tuned for the next video. We're going to be talking about the mechanisms and causes of Alzheimer's.